All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. Can everyone hear me, or do I can try using the microphone? We do have one.
And the people.
Are you fine?
And now hopefully I don't drown out the people on video. So I do want to thank everybody for coming out and for this celebration of the life of my sister, of our sister, Nancy. I don't know how to turn the volume on the mic up, though.
Just hold it close to your mouth.
Yep. And I want to pull up a PowerPoint presentation here. And oh, well. Yep. All right, so I'd just like to thank everybody for coming, and both on camera, those of you who joined us by Zoom, and those people that came out here today to Paramount High School, where our sister taught for 28 years. Nancy, there are 5 children. I am the youngest by 10 years, minus 10 days. So Nancy's birthday is today, November 19th. Mine is on November 9th. And this year we had actually planned to get together and celebrate our decade birthdays together. I turned 60, Nancy was turning 70. And obviously that did not happen. So, now we are celebrating our birthdays with all of you together, today. And, when I was first trying to figure out how to open today, I was not quite sure. So I was remembering some of the things that I used to do with my sister, when celebrating birthdays. And she was a little bit more in my life than some of my other siblings when I was a kid, because they kind of went away to college. I'm 10 years younger than Nancy, 8 years younger than Tom, who is the next in line. So they went away to college and were in dorms, and Nancy kind of stayed around the house, and so, she was there. Well, when the whole family was there were 4 bedrooms in our house. And I think I shared a bedroom with my sister, which gave me a fondness for Snoopy and Peanuts, because she had these giant 2-foot by 3-foot Dayglow posters of Snoopy and Charlie Brown in her room. And yes, we have a relative that drew Snoopy cartoons for a living, but I think it was really having those posters when I was a year old and up to 5 years old hanging up that gave me my love for Snoopy and Peanuts, just like Nancy. And, so that was kind of, some early stuff for me. But she also kind of gave me a sense of adventure. So she took me to movies a lot. She took me, I think, to probably my first horror movie when I was 14. And, it gave me a couple of nightmares for a couple of nights after. I've watched the movie since then, and it's actually not that good a horror movie, but I still remembered the scenes from when I was 14 that gave me the nightmares, and they're still in the movie. It's called Burnt Offerings. If anybody wants to go out and watch Burnt Offerings, it's an interesting science fiction, horror movie from 1976. And she was also my roller coaster buddy. And in fact, on one of our birthdays, we went out to Magic Mountain. I think the Revolution roller coaster had just opened up, and a few years later, they opened up Colossus. And I would go to the park with her, and we would ride those roller coasters over and over and over again. And in fact, on one evening with Colossus, I think we went out 5 times in a row. They told us we didn't have to get out of the seats and get back on again. We just let, we're not busy. We'll just let you go. And, she was determined on that ride, when you're going down that first hill really, really fast, to figure out when you could let go of the rails and not have your knees slam up into the bar. And she never quite succeeded. So at the end of the evening, she had these dark black and blue marks on her, on her legs from hitting the bar. Now she was a little bit more adventurous than I was, because she started going skydiving and, jumping out of airplanes from 12,000 feet. I went up in the airplane and I watched 32 people jump out of the airplane. It's the first time I ever went up in an airplane that didn't have a door. And I could open up a window and stick my head out the window and watch them jump out, the door. And my face came back. My hair was kind of a darker color then, but when I pulled my face back in, it looked great because of all the ice crystals that had formed. She told me that when I turned 18, she would take me skydiving. But I think by that time, she had taken 3 friends skydiving with her, and each of them injured themselves in some way on landing. So when I turned 18, I chickened out. like, nope, everybody that's gone up with you has injured something. I really don't want to injure something. So, but she brought that sense of adventure and stuff to, I think, pretty much everything that she did. She devoted, her energy into her art, into her poetry, into her students, which I'll talk about a little bit, later with what she did there. But I kind of figured that with teaching here for 28 years, she probably reached at least 5,000 students, both through English classes as well as the student club, the Macaws, that she created to do community service. And we'll also talk about that a little bit later as well. Right now, I'm going to first, I should say, I need to thank Paramount High School and the school district for allowing us to be here. And yesterday they were fantastic. I think there were 8 people in the room helping us get everything set up, figuring out how to connect everything so that we could have this, on Zoom. And and here we are. So I really, appreciate everything that they've done, for us, and for those of you that are, here from Paramount. Thank you very much. And I think I will stop there for now. And Tom is up next. So then he is number 4 of 5 in the family, 8 years older than me, 2 years younger than Nancy. I think I got that right.
And the tallest, you forgot that. I think you can all hear me. I have a projecting voice. Is that okay? Yeah. So I'm intending to cover Nancy's early years because I'm the one here who's known her the longest. Virtually, my older brother Steve is here, but I'm giving the talk. Anyways, I've known her since she was 2 years old. I've got to admit, I don't remember that part real well because I was 0. But one of my earliest memories is when I was 8 and she was 10, and we were actually waiting for Mark to come home from the hospital because he'd just been born. And Nancy and I climbed a tree at the side of our house so we could see our parents' car coming in. And we climbed really high up to the peak of the house. It's a 1-story house, I have to admit. But nevertheless, we were up there, they got home, and it came time to climb down the tree, and I couldn't figure out how to climb down. So Nancy climbed down and she said she'd go tell people so they could come back and help me. So a couple of hours later, a couple of days, it really seemed like somebody asked, well, where's Tommy? And Nancy said, oh, he's stuck up in the tree. Okay. Now, Nancy herself had some childhood traumas. Probably the biggest one, I think, was probably before I was born. We don't quite know the age. But my older brother, Steve, the oldest child, made a trap by digging a hole. He claims it's only 6 inches deep, and he covered it with chicken wire and camouflaged it with grass or something. And then apparently he actually led Nancy out to it, and she fell into it as intended, but as not intended, she got badly cut by the chicken wire. So they rushed her to the ER and they stitched it up, 17 stitches. And they really did a pretty cruddy job of it because you could count every single stitch for the rest of her life. So other than the scar, she came out fine. This was on her calf. But years later, my dad was cutting her hair. With that many kids, you don't take them to the barber, and he accidentally dropped the clippers and cut her on the forehead. And you don't want a scar there where it shows. So they took her to somebody we knew. And my understanding is he came out of surgery still dressed in his green outfit with the hat on and everything, and put 1 or 2 stitches in her forehead. And that was successful enough that I have no idea exactly where that was. So Nancy was the most athletic person in our family. Now, that's not saying much. But she was the tetherball champion of the school. And at school at recess, you play tetherball. And 2 people play, and whoever wins gets to stay, and the next person goes in. So Nancy could spend the whole recess playing tetherball because she never lost. In general, she beat me too, but I wasn't that much competition. Now, if I remember right, and I might be making this up, when we were adults, we went over and we played tetherball, and she didn't beat me so easily, and maybe I even beat her. Having 9 inches on her might have helped. Now, she's the most extroverted in our family, and again, that's not saying a lot. We're all introverts. But I'm sure you'll hear from other people, she was more extroverted than probably anybody in this room. so I have a story about that. This was in her adult life. She was teaching here, I believe, at the time, and she'd read that she wanted to write. She was working on writing at that time. I forget, short stories or a novel, but anyways, that you should go away by yourself and write. So she'd rented a place on the beach north of San Francisco. We live in the Bay Area, and Nancy was down here. So she drove up, she stopped by, visited us. She went to this place with this expectation to stay there, chill out alone and write. And the next day she came back. She was just going crazy. She was alone. There was no way that she was going to succeed in writing like that. And in fact, she's done most of her writing sitting in a local Starbucks because there's people there, and it's just what she needed. So not so long ago, she admitted something that goes back to our childhood, that she was a Himel ghost. Now I have to tell you what this is. That there's 5 kids in our family, and something got broken or somebody did something wrong, and the parents would line us all up and say, "Did you do it?" "No, mommy, I didn't do it." "Did you do it?" "No, I didn't do it." All the way down to 5 of us. None of us did it. And then we'd all get punished. And Nancy admitted as an adult that the Himel ghost was typically her, but I didn't know it at the time. Now Nancy was, I intended to show you some, okay, down arrow, page down. Down arrow's not doing it for me, Mark. Good. So you've seen some of these in the slideshow above, but you may not know which one was Nancy. So now you've got a nice purple arrow pointing it to you. It was a big family. 1 year after Mark was born, we were in a house that was 3 bedrooms. So my parents were in 1 bedroom. The 4 older siblings were in 2 sets of bunk beds in another bedroom, and Mark got his own bedroom. Now, Nancy also had a very artistic side in addition to all the English and writing that you're familiar with. And she did various kinds of art, but the one that really matched it, that did really well, was where you take a piece of plywood and you would burn outlines in it, you paint each section, and then you glue pieces of cloth to it, and then you cover it with 9 layers of varnish. She and her best friend Karen took a class on how to do this from somebody, and Nancy did it for many years. So the angel you see here was commissioned either by me or my wife Valerie. By my wife Valerie, she takes credit. Nancy had made an angel for herself, and I loved it so much that we asked her to make one for me. And so this is the angel. It hangs in our family room. And there's all sorts of symbolism in it. I'm a physicist, and you might see something, the gold, you see a little Jewish star, which I think is symbolism, but the things going around it are atomic orbitals to Nancy. And I think there's a pie in here someplace. There's all sorts of symbolism she explained to me, but it's irrelevant to me. It's a beautiful angel. And she did a lot of artwork like this. The one on the right, she did for her favorite Starbucks, where she went in all the time near Paramount. And it actually represents that Starbucks with, you see the pirate ship, because you guys are the pirates. I mean, this high school is the pirates. So the last thing I want to cover is she had multiple jobs before she found her true calling of being an English teacher. Her first job was working for Wallack's Music City. She started that in high school over the summer, and I think part-time. And did that for a fair number of years. And then she had a series of jobs. She worked for Mitsubishi, first assembling printed circuit boards, and then later in customer service. We got a discounted television out of that. It was a great job. I think she was a bartender, but I can't get anybody else to confirm it for a while. She was a cab driver. A lot of these were just her way to survive and make money. She was an interior decorator. She did some training for that, did it for a while. But then she went back to school and got her teaching credential and taught high school, which has really been most of her life. That's all I have.
I can confirm that she was a bartender as well as a taxi driver. She said there was a lot of overlap in the conversations.
Those are two things that Nancy and I had in common. I also was a taxi driver and a bartender at different times, but we just thought that was so funny. It's like, how can that be? But it is. Thanks for reminding me of the cab driver and bartender.
All right, thanks, Tom. And I think we've got Megan coming up next. So she's joining us from New York. So Megan, if you could unmute and
Yeah,
there
I'm
you
right
are.
here.
I'm gonna put you into hopefully speaker view, make you a little bigger on our screen.
All right. Let me know when you're ready. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we hear you fine.
Perfect. So I don't know. I wish you hadn't put me after my dad, Uncle Mark. So some of my favorite memories with Aunt Nancy are the summer visits that I had with her when I was young. A lot of kids get to go visit their grandparents over the summer. I didn't get to do that, but I did get to fly on a plane all by myself to Southern California, and Aunt Nancy would meet me at the gate, and we would spend a week hanging out together. We would go to the Arboretum, to the beach. We would do craft projects at her table while the sun streamed in and made her living room glow. And I loved every moment of it. I didn't know why I didn't have cousins to play with when I visited her, but I really didn't mind as I basked in her affection. Every moment of those visits, she showed me what it was like to choose joy, to choose passion. Sorry, I'm moving my notes to where I can read them a little better. There we go. To choose joy, to choose passion, to choose what you want, even when other people look at you a little differently. And so as I grew up, so did our relationship. She took me for my first manicure. And after I moved to New York, we would meet up over here. When she came out for conferences, we would go to meals and museums and shows, just spend time catching up on life. We even took a trip to Niagara Falls, and getting to spend that time with her, that was precious. But in the day-to-day life that you get with someone, that's where the fun things happen. I remember venting to her one day about makeup and how I couldn't get my eyeliner even, typical teenage angst. And she responded to me by saying, "That's why I got mine tattooed on." And my jaw dropped. She explained to me that she wanted to look good and made up, but she didn't want to deal with the hassle. And that was the thing about Aunt Nancy. Whatever she did, she committed to like 110%. She did it all the way, and she did it because it made her life better. It brought her joy, it brought her peace, it brought her happiness. It improved her life in some way. It didn't have to be big, although it could be. Her decisions about where she lived, where she went, what she did with her time to collect art, to be art, to make and share art. Those were all choices that she made. And a lot of the things that she made and that she collected were kind of quirky. But I think that's what brought the joy. I think everyone here is, I don't know if everyone here is wearing purple. I'm wearing purple. A lot of us are. And that's just one element. It doesn't really, I'm going off script. It doesn't really have any meaning, except it has all the meaning. And that's the thing about Aunt Nancy. She chose something because she loved it. So as an adult, that was the greatest thing that Aunt Nancy gave me. That in a society that tells us what we should do and should like and should think, to just take the time to see what it is that you do like, what brings you happiness and joy and peace, what improves your life, and then just do that. To do it unabashedly, to do it loudly, and to dive in 110%. So will I ever get my eyeliner tattooed on? Probably not. But Aunt Nancy showed me how to live a life based on those things, the small ones and the big ones, a life that is made better by the things I love. And that's what I will keep doing in her name.
All right. Thank you, Megan. All right, let's see. Karen, you are up.
Let's see if everybody can hear me first. Can everybody hear me all right?
No.
Nope, okay. Okay,
Microphone it is, and
Well-
hopefully that down arrow will take you to your slide.
okay, thank you.
Make sure picture's smaller so we see them.
I'm being told to shrink you.
Shrink me. No, yeah. Don't do that. Okay, Megan, this one's for you. I got my eyebrows tattooed last year because Nancy said it would look better on me.
No, you didn't.
My mother's
love
had
it.
her eyebrows tattooed because of Nancy. My sister Diane has because of Nancy. My sister Sue in the back. My mother's had her eyeliner tattooed on. So Megan, you might think about that. My name is Karen and I live in Portland, Oregon. And I met Nancy. This is how I met Nancy. I was driving in the car with my mom, and I heard this song on the radio that I'd never heard before, and I just got barely a little bit of the lyrics and a little bit of the melody. So I said, "Mom, take me to Wallach's Music City. There's a song I want to get some sheet music for." And so I kept humming the tune in my head so that I could know when I got there to have help to pick out some music. So I hummed da 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 da. Sound familiar? So I took that tune with me and went into Wallach's Music City. If anybody lived in West Covina, California at the time, it was a huge music store. And they had a sheet music department and reel-to-reel tapes and a parts and service department and instruments. And I worked my way back with my mom to the sheet music department and I hummed that tune for Nancy. She's wearing a name tag. Hummed that tune for Nancy and she said, "Oh, that's Scarborough Fair. It's right over there on that wall." And so I went over to the wall to look for the sheet music. And I know my mother was having a nice long conversation with Nancy at her little checkout counter. I took my sheet music up to the counter and Nancy said, "I got permission from my boss. You can work for me this weekend. Your mother says you need a job." So mothers know best. And so I substituted for her several times. And then I eventually got a job at Wallach's Music City as a checker at the check stand. And I got to work the switchboard machine. Only us old people know what a switchboard is. And so I could plug in and talk to Nancy and goof off, and I really got in a lot of trouble for that. But so we scheduled our 20-minute breaks together, and we had to clock out, and we were in the Eastland Shopping Center is where our little store was. And we clocked out together and we absolutely ran across the parking lot to the Broadway that used to have a candy department. We each bought one piece of chocolate covered honeycomb. It's now called seafoam. And then from that, we would run to it was a split level mall, outdoor mall. So we'd run to the top of the escalator And then when there was nobody around, when there was nobody going up the escalator, we would jump on the top of the escalator. Help me. I've lost myself. Okay, we'd start at the top of the escalator and slide down as fast as we possibly can. I was 17, she was 18, 17 and 18-year-olds have no fear of anything. And if we timed it just right, we could go down 3 times and then rush our way back to work and clock in. Just like that. So that's how it started to be my best friend. To be my best friend for 51 years. So my best friend for 51 years, my son Christopher, at about age 7, she says, you know, Aunt Nancy is your non-boring friend. And so for 51 years, whenever he greeted Nancy, oh, Nancy, my non-boring aunt. And so she, of course, you know, she adopted all of you and made relationships with all of you, but she was like the aunt to my kids. So things Nancy taught me, just to ask. And those of you that were in the macaws, you'll know that people are more than willing to help you when they know it's for a good cause. So I learned from Nancy just to ask. And those of you that know about her, somebody else may talk about this, but she was able to procure a lot of building materials and paint and supplies to do her little ministry of fixing up the homes here in Paramount. And I'm not sure if it went into Long Beach, you might be able to tell me that, but people were more than happy to give, and she was able to get so many things donated. And in return, she was able to support people by bringing food to them and bringing cookies and appreciating the police department and making a turducken dinner for one of the police departments. And she was just always giving back because people gave to her. And I was able to take that with me to, I've worked for a retirement community for a lot of years. And so I learned from her to just ask. And so I called and asked if a place up in the mountains would offer a sleigh ride to some of my senior citizens who had never been on a sleigh ride. And that just started at just ask, and then call the newspaper and let them know that this company is giving a free sleigh ride to our residents and getting them, getting a little advertising for them as well. Books. This is something I learned from her. Lots of books tell stories, but only a few books have exquisite language to tell a story. And so I know that one of Nancy's favorite books was Night Circus. And Night Circus is one of the books that as you read it, it's like you're actually in the story, seeing before your own eyes the story unfold. That's how the language is for that book. I've never read anything. I've read things that Nancy has suggested before, but that's our favorite book. It just was so visual. Send poems and stories. I don't know, maybe one of you will be able to comment on this, but I remember at some point that Nancy's students wrote something, wrote a story or letters or something after reading a Maya Angelou poem. And the stories went to Maya Angelou's office, and she called this high school to talk to Nancy. And the secretary said she's in class and didn't get a phone number and didn't get any way to return a call, and hung up on Maya Angelou's receptionist. And I don't know how many of you know that, but she obviously had some stories and poems that her kids had sent, and she was going to get recognized from Maya Angelou. One of her favorite poems was from Brian Doyle. It's called The Joyous Balardaris, and that speaks of, it's a poem about hummingbirds. And so if you ever get an opportunity to read Brian Doyle, it's one of Nancy's favorite poems. I guess I just know her in a different way than all of you do, and you may have some ideas of what her different poems and stories are. I once asked Nancy where she got her inspiration as a poet. Sometimes it's life events, sometimes it's a beautiful landscape, sometimes it's a piece of art, and sometimes it's a story she heard from someone else. Nancy's poem, One Less Child, was written shortly after I shared a story about our son Christopher, he was barely 2 years old, who on one Thanksgiving day at Grandma's house reached up his hands and scraped his fingers through her freshly made pumpkin pie, and then snuck off in a corner to suck his fingers dry. So Nancy used that. And here's an excerpt from the poem that she has called One Less Child. Oh, but I pray that you get someplace better than the streets that killed you. I close my eyes and turn back time, and I remember when you were just barely 2, that Christmas when you reached up on Grandma's counter and scratched your pudgy hand across her sweet potato pie. Oh, what a hissy fit she had. So did Grandma. So it was a privilege and honor to be a friend of Nancy's for 51 years. And I was able to say goodbye as my friend of 51 years left this life on earth and as a beautiful angel and multicolored wings entered heaven to live with God for all eternity. That's my friend. Miss you, Nancy. Thank you.
Folks on Zoom, minor technical difficulties solved. If all technical difficulties were so simple. Seems I'm on the agenda next, and I think I'm going to be sharing a poem of Nancy's. And this poem requires a little bit of a backstory. It's called Reunion in Novi Dwor. And I think everybody here probably knows that we come from a Jewish background. And we've, over the last 8 to 10 years, through some DNA research, we've discovered some family, and also through finding the town that our great-grandparents were from and spent time in the mid to late 1800s to the early 1900s, was a town called Novi Dwor, which is about 30 kilometers north of Warsaw in Poland. And most of our family had left in the early 1900s, actually around 1903. Grandparents on my dad's side made it to the UK, and then eventually in like 1908 made it to the United States. Not all of our family left, and certain things happened in Eastern Europe and in Poland in the late 1930s with Hitler, and this poem is related to some of the events that took place, there. And I'll read the poem because I think it kind of explains, everything, but it is a town where our family comes from. And the idea for the poem came from a workshop that Nancy took where the attendees were asked to write a poem from the perspective of an inanimate object. And this is what my sister comes up with. Now, a lot of my sister's poems have a lot of anger and a lot of darkness in them. This is not going to be a light poem by any means. But for somebody in certain times of her life, it's hard to believe this, that with purple hair, that she didn't really want to be different. She really, in the last several years of her life, re-embraced her Judaism. Seeing all the division that was happening in the US and in the world, and an increase in anti-Semitism. And so this is an outgrowth of that, plus what we've been learning about our family. And I hope I can make it through this. For 300 years, some of us stood watch over the bodies, then bones of your Jewish ancestors. For 300 years, we watched the people who came to visit them, relatives and friends from our town, from Warsaw, and places even further away. We watched them leave small stones atop us, pebbles of covenant and remembrance. They kissed with cold lips and fingers raw from sorrow and wind. For 300 years, by the elbowed shores of the Vistula and Naru, we weathered storms, sunned and faded, shared our landed border with our Gentile neighbors, divided by only a fence that did nothing to keep the essences of graveyard flowers away. We stared either forward or up, our faces heritage proud, carved with life songs and stories of the beloveds below us, with biblical passages and poetries of blessings of the one God. And then came the onset of the Second Great War and the invasion of our home. The Nazi soldiers who tore us away to lie and crumble under roads, who ground the bodies and bones of our blessed into asphalt that bore the treads of tanks near the tracks of trains that would take their descendants to Auschwitz to serve, to starve, until it was their time for gas. And for 70 years, we lived in hiding, blinded and buried in the dirt and mud, under the crushing weight of human tamping in a town where not even one Jew of the thousands remained. We were so erased from memory, no one knew we were there. Then in 1988, two sons of two survivors bought our cemetery home back, emptied it of rubble and waste, erected a fence for its protection. In a short miracle, 12 of our 800 headstones were found. And under pressure from the Christian populace of Poland, road excavations unearthed over 100 more. And now along a pavered plaza, on two high cement walls, we hang as one community, as resurrected symbols of resilience. Our edges are rough and crumbling, some of our faces barely there. Townspeople continue to find us under sidewalks and playgrounds, and they bring us to this new home built on our original resting place. They lean us against the locked gate to wait for the memorial caretakers to carry us inside. Some of us come in pieces and wait in careful piles for wholeness. Behind us, triangled pages of black granite, the names of the vanished are incised. 4,000 Jews who inhabited the houses, who ran the businesses in what became a ghetto prison, walled in wood. And when the winds blow in from Auschwitz, they carry the ash of the ancestors of our visitors, who gather each year in early June to visit our stones, to find new or forgotten family. And they each bring a stone from their homeland, many from Israel, to continue to honor the covenant and community their everlasting God made first, with Moses, and then with Joshua, and always with the unvanquished Jews, his chosen people, not to be forgotten. I honestly didn't know who to have come up here after that. So it's me. And so now I want to make a little bit of a transition, and Karen mentioned some of this, and Tom as well, and Megan actually, about Nancy and the impact she had in Paramount on her students. And I'm just showing a few pictures. The upper left one is actually a picture that I took when her students were going out through town to basically bring Christmas to the adopted families of the McCaws, the club that she had started. And I think that evening we went and visited probably 10 different families, and we brought them everything that they needed for their Christmas, the dinners, the presents. It astounded me that they would get the lists of what each child wanted, what they needed. And then she would go around the town and basically get everything, as Karen said, if you ask, they will give. And just, remarkable what they were able to accomplish here. The picture down on the lower left is Nancy with the macaws, taking some of that Home Depot product that they were able to get donated and helping, do some quick renovations on the homes of families here that needed it and couldn't afford to do it themselves. And then you see her in her classroom. You can't see the walls. Her rooms were just covered, bookshelves with books. She is always able to find the story that touches someone's heart. And later on today, if we have time, I will share a story of one of the students, but we have a lot of people here, I think, that are going to share some really nice stories, as well. But she and I actually were both had a joy of science fiction. We would share novels to read, and the book, the novel that Karen Night Circus mentioned is one that Nancy also suggested that I read and would love, and I did. Now, there's another book that Nancy suggested. She said it was her favorite science fiction book. It was called Dahlgren, and I fought my way halfway through that book, and finally I couldn't understand why anybody would like this book. But one of my favorite, one of my instructors, professors at Cal Poly, said, "Oh, that book," because he wanted us to read another book by this same author in class. And I was like, I don't want to read a book by this author again, because I know it's my sister's favorite author, but I can't stand him. And he goes, "Oh, you must have read Dahlgren." And apparently, Asimov, as the guy Asimov said about that book, that no author should be allowed to publish their notes. But when you do read the book, and as Karen mentioned with Night Circus, you listen to the language and how Samuel Delany wrote, and it is absolutely remarkable. It was the plot that I couldn't handle. But as a writer, Samuel Delany is actually rather remarkable in how he uses the English language. And Nancy would use that with her students. And with that, I think I am going to, Chanel was a student of Nancy's as well. And she has shared a video with us. She wasn't sure she was going to be able to make it. And I think she also wasn't sure she was able to get through what she wanted to say. So she recorded it. And so I am going to hopefully play that now.
Hello, my name is Chanel Morse-Varopoulos. Please forgive me for reading this. I think I'm in shock. That sounds so weird, I know. But every time I think about Nancy, I start crying. And I wanted to make sure that I said what I needed to say. I met Nancy Himel when I was in high school in Paramount, where she taught English and facilitated the creation of our yearbooks. I graduated class of 1998. While Nancy did not teach me English, I was in her yearbook class off and on. I couldn't decide if I wanted to write for the yearbook or the school paper, neither of which I felt my passion for pure creativity fit into. But Nancy's honesty and her love of poetry and the arts were what drew us together. She fed my passion as an artist by helping me appreciate contemporary writers, because at 14 or so, when I met her, I was unaware that all writers were not only of the time of Poe, Shakespeare, and Steinbeck. Before she introduced me to the poetry of Mark Doty, I assumed all authors that lined my parents' bookshelves were long gone, and some of them are still around today. I helped, writers were not only of the time of Poe, Shakespeare, and Steinbeck. Before she introduced me to the poetry of Mark Doty, I assumed all authors that lined my parents' bookshelves were long gone, and some of them are still around today. I helped, no, I didn't help me, sorry. She helped me understand there was no shame in editing as a valuable tool I've since come to enjoy. I am at a loss for words because as a mother with a busy life, I try to stay away from social media, which can get distracting. So I didn't know she was sick. and I only learned that she passed away when I messaged her with the hope of catching up and seeing if I could talk her into book clubbing or finding a poetry retreat. And now I feel like I've hit an invisible wall and I am stunned. Nancy is missed and loved. Thank you.
A Dream Within a Dream by Edgar Allan Poe. Take this kiss upon the brow, and in parting from you now, thus much let me avow, you are not wrong who deem that my days have been a dream. Yet if hope has flown away, in a night or in a day, in a vision or in none, is it therefore the less gone? All that we see or seem is but a dream within a dream. I stand amid the roar of a surf-tormented shore, and I hold within my hand grains of golden sand. How few, yet how they creep through my fingers to the deep, while I weep, while I weep. O God, can I not grasp them with a tighter clasp? O God, can I not save one from the pitiless wave? Is all that we see or seem but a dream within a dream? Hello, my name is
All right, before I invite Bob to come and join us, I think, Chanel, is a really good example of how Nancy was able to, maintain relationships with students over years. And she graduated in 1995. And, we actually have somebody working for my company that was a student of Nancy's and went to graduate school at the University of Michigan. I actually met him at the University of Michigan and was able to, I asked him where he was from. Are you originally from Michigan? And he said, well, no, I'm from Southern California. I'm like, oh, well, so am I, from Covina. Where are you from? He says, Paramount. Like, did you go to Paramount High School? Yes. Did you have Miss Himmel for English? Yes. Wait a minute, you're a Himmel? Like, yeah. So I snapped his picture. This is probably 7 years after he graduated. He was 1 year from finishing up his PhD. And I snapped a picture of him, texted it to Nancy. She's in the middle of class. She texts me back, Ramon. So I put him, she calls, they talk for a couple of minutes. And I talked to her afterwards, and she thought really, really highly of him, but she remembered him 8 years later from his picture. And a year later, he finished up his PhD. He calls me up and he says, hey, you've got some jobs at your company I'm interested in. Would you refer me? I'm like, well, my sister thought highly of you, so yes. And he's been working with us and doing a great job for 2 or 3 years. And hopefully he stays with us for a long time, but it's a very small world. And like I said, just I try to do this in my own life, make connections with people and then do whatever I can to kind of keep them and make them last for for a long time. And she was just a great example of that, for me. So now I'm hoping, Bob, that you are on and can unmute and share your story. You've known Nancy for a long time as well.
Yeah, I had to turn the Zoom off. I'm looking at what I wrote down. I have a hard time thinking Nancy's not here. I think of Nancy and I just think of her big heart. If she saw somehow she could help somebody, she was there. That was her true north. I was a conductor of the South Coast Chorale. I'd tell her we're having a show. She's like, oh, can you get tickets for my kids? I have other things to think about. Jeez Louise. If I wrote something, I have this blog, can I share it? I had a personality quiz. She's like, oh, I want the kids. It's like, Nancy, for God's sake, what am I, just a source of things for your kids? And it's like, yeah, that's kind of Nancy. And, but if you were in business, don't disappoint her. She's going to write a letter expecting a response. And she did that, whether it was over the wrong thing that arrived in an order or the wrong flavor that was discontinued on something she liked, you name it. And I met Nancy 25 years ago at First Congregational Church. She found I was a writer and she was a writer. So she offered to help me write my first book, You Can Compete. There it is. And I'd written it. And I told her, well, I just want you to help me, edit it for the grammar. And she was like, oh, no, that's how it works. Come over to my apartment. And so almost daily, I went over there and had to sit on her couch and read it out loud. And all of the angels were around us, and that big white chicken with the parachute in the corner, right? I love that. And that simple act of reading it out loud let me catch many things myself, or she'd stop me and say, no, what the hell does that mean? She may not have said it that way, but it was always that question. She was very serious when it came down to writing, and it was invaluable as she acted as the unknowing reader. And when we moved to New York, Nancy, I would be on the phone every Saturday morning doing the same thing, me reading my most recent blog and her at home on her couch, both of us drinking iced tea and making corrections. And I felt bad about her taking her time, so I offered to pay her, and she used that to treat herself when she traveled. And eventually we shared a Google document where she could see the wrong punctuation as well. And she corrected many things, but she also knew that my style was what it was, and she let me break the rules to maintain my voice and my writing. She probably got that from her own poetry. And I also loved how she made students accountable. I remember when she was doing the McCalls at Paramount and getting donations from people all over the place to provide Christmas. And she had strict requirements. You couldn't just show up to spread the presents. You had to put in the work to collect and distribute them too. And she was always teaching. And one of my favorite memories, though, has nothing to do with her as a teacher or editor. It was during a heat wave in Long Beach when my husband, Bill, and I offered to help her put in an air conditioner to her second floor apartment that she'd purchased this air conditioner at Home Depot. And we had it all ready to go, just had to lower the top window down a little bit to anchor it, and something slipped. The air conditioner flew out of our hands, down the side of the building, and smashed in the ground below. And we all laughed, but knowing retail, I told her, well, just return it. And she looked incredulously at me, I can return it? Yeah, we'll put it back in the box and just say it didn't work out. It's a big box, what the hell? We went downstairs, and instead of being a rectangle, the whole thing was now at a 45-degree angle. You really think so? She said. I said, absolutely. Put it back in the box and we'll put it in your car. You'll be fine. She called me a bit later to say that when she got Watson at Home Depot and to go get a cart to bring the air conditioner, and a nice young guy from Home Depot met her and helped her put it on the cart. And he took one look in that box, and before she could say anything, he offered, this happens all the time. Somebody buys one of these already broken. Let's get you a new one. And she loved that. We shared the love of John Denver concert that we both attended in Universal Studios in the 70s. And that one concert made me decide I wanted to become a music conductor. And since she was an employee of Wallach's Music City, she got to go every night. I was so jealous of that. And she was great. If even then she would tell me about she made this giant tree for Wallach. She was an asset to that company. I don't think they realized what they had. Maybe they'd still be in business if she was still there. And while she only had a few years in Tucson, it was clear she had found the place to settle, and her posts were always about the magic of watching the javelinas or the storms or her albino hummingbird. And prior to COVID, she would come to our house on the Hudson River every year. And like us, she loved to just sit on the porch and look out at the river. And this one Easter, she decided to make peeps out of rabbits. One time she wanted us to make a gingerbread of our house for Christmas. And we got into the project. She's like, Nancy, this is work. This is my vacation. I don't want to do it. But we still got most of it up. And that last picture that we have of her in front of the angel's wings is so fitting, with her arms outstretched, big smile, and the joy of living on her face. So I just hope we all take that big heart into ours to make a difference. Thanks for having me today.
Bob, I've got that video that you sent me.
Oh, I'll give you the cue up. So
you want to cue that up?
So my second book is out, and I'm being invited by the American Booksellers Association, which is like 1,000, 2,000 people. I'm a motivational speaker, and I tell her I'm going to go do this. And I said, I have this idea, though. You are so amazing at English. Could you help booksellers understand the importance of guiding someone to a book, because you do it so well? You just say, I have a bunch of books over here, pick up a book and read it. But a lot of times she took the time to match the book to the student. And then once she knew one thing, she'd do another. She goes, I'd love to do that. I go, great. Meet me I think we were at Barnes & Noble there in Long Beach. And we went together, and all I did was video it. But again, look at the passion she has. And again, quite serious about the job she knew how to do.
Okay, so like this is Go Ask Alice, and as a teacher, I think it's horribly written. I mean, not horribly, but it doesn't have the language. I always tell kids that I love books because of language, but it has a gripping story that's written in a series of diary entries by a girl who is descending into hell and will probably kill herself. So if you love this book, then to take Speak, which is about a girl who is raped in the summer at a party by a football player and refuses to tell anybody because she knows what will happen if she does. And so she doesn't speak about hardly anything. And she also descends into this own private hell that our kids have lived through and need to know that other people have lived through it too and survived. And once you read this, then you can take them to Alice Sebold's The Lovely Bones, where the girl is already dead. She's been raped and mutilated and killed, and she's in heaven, talking down and watching over her family while they try to find her killer. And in the meantime, all of this healing stuff is going on. And if you can get kids interested in that, then you can take them in a whole different genre and hook them on Ellen Hopkins' books, which are also gritty, much more gritty in language, but they're written in poetry. And a kid sees this really fat book and yet can finish it in 6 days because this is all that's on a page. And yet it is harrowing lives of kids in horrible, horrible circumstances. Our kids in inner city LA and even in Orange County need this kind of literature to know that they can make it through their roughest times, and they eat it up.
All right. Thanks, Bob, and thanks for recording that. So I realized that there is a story, a testimony that one of Nancy's former students posted on Facebook. His name is Victor. I was trying to figure out where would be a good place to share this. You, Victor? Do you mind if I read this? Or do you want to come up and share the story?
I can. Wow, thank you. Wow. Appreciate that. Hi, can you hear me? Here, because I haven't been back in like 16 years. I graduated in 2006. And this was my 10th grade English teacher. I was part of the macaws. And I was one of the Santas. I'm not sure if that picture was actually me. I'm gonna read this. Ms. Himmel, you've been on my mind all day since I learned of your passing. I've held a lot of gratitude for you in the past, and that gratitude has been particularly present today. You were my 10th grade honors English teacher at Paramount High School. And the reason why I fell in love with literature, poetry, and community service. You held me. I often found you intimidating and frightening, but that's because you saw something in me that I couldn't see at the time. You knew I was creative, poetic, excellent, before I could ever see it. As a native Spanish speaker, you knew I had a place in both languages, and you pushed me to explore that space. I still remember the way you'd look at me with such disappointment when I didn't submit my best work. You had such high expectations of me when the world around me didn't. Around that time, you introduced me to my favorite short story, The Unaccompanied Sonata by Orson Scott Card. God, that story exploded my world. Almost 20 years later, I still think about that story, and when I do, I'm back in your classroom. The walls exploding with words, macaws, and the work of all your students. And you, this towering figure in purple, waving your arms like a magician, saying words I knew nothing about. That story really unlocked something in me, and I found a passion I then learned to pursue. You're responsible in many ways for getting me into college at UC Irvine as an English major, full ride. And you're responsible in many ways as well for my path towards graduating recently with a master's degree in creative writing from the University of Oxford. A dream I never knew I had until I was in it. Who knew some kid born of immigrant parents would go off to read and study in the Bodleian Library at Oxford, one of the oldest libraries in Europe? Apparently you knew that. Thank you for knowing that. Thank you for your vivacious and determined spirit. Thank you for your wisdom and leadership and the pushes you've given to so many of your students like me. Your words and voice undoubtedly have had a direct impact on my life. And I am sure in the lives of hundreds, if not thousands of many other students who have learned to see the poetry and the daily because of you. You did such great work with us. A+. Gratitude. Thank you for.
That was one of the tributes on Nancy's Facebook page that brought me to tears. And it's so true. I mean, you could see the potential and the light in pretty much anyone. All right.
Okay, so like this is, okay, so like.
All right. Nancy, you are up.
So I'm Nancy's cousin. I'm a second cousin. And Nancy and I used to play together at her Aunt Ethel or my Bubby's, my grandmother's house until we were about 6. And then she disappeared, the family disappeared. And, you know, I was a little kid, so I never kind of questioned, why aren't we playing with the Himmels anymore? It just went on and played with other cousins. And then about 60 years later, I got a text, I think it was a message on Facebook. And the message said, "Are you my long lost cousin?" And you know what I thought? Spam, you know, don't answer it, don't click on it. So I didn't. And then, but you know, Nancy, messages kept coming. And so finally she sent a picture of us playing in my Bubby's living room. And I said, okay. I remembered her because her name is Nancy and my name is Nancy. And I was born September 19th and so we're like 2 exact months apart. And I thought, why would relatives give the 2 kids in the family the same name? And I wasn't sure who deserved it, like her or me. But anyway, so I remembered her. So she sent me this picture and then I knew, okay, I've got to answer this. And I live in Canada, but I was coming down to LA. So we were going to meet. And I was petrified. It's like, what if I don't recognize her? What if we don't have anything to say? But you know what? It was just like the time compressed, as though there was no time. But more than that is I felt that I had discovered a soulmate. And so in a very short time, that was 2017 or 2018, that we had together as adults. It was really special for me. I felt there was somebody, maybe like, you know, some of you who already spoke, that they could get inside my head and understand where I was coming from. So she sent me in the, I am so sorry. I'm sorry to everybody and that's trying to listen to us over. And sorry, I was trying not to let my paper fall off the podium. So she shared her poems with me, and I wanted to read one of her poems, and the poem that I chose, it's what she calls a responsive writing. So you who graduated from Oxford would understand this much better than I, but it was a poem in response to this painting by Vincent van Gogh, and the painting is called Field of Spring Wheat at Sunrise. And this poem appeared in Hybrid Works, which is a literary journal. It came out in June of 2021. And apparently, according to that interview that the journal did with her, this was painted by Van Gogh, excuse me, right before he died. And she said in the interview, I am with him in so many ways. So the poem is called Vincent Asks, What If in a Field of Spring Wheat, that's the painting, in a field of spring wheat at sunrise. Do you guys know this one? You can hum along if you know it already. To the scattered stalks, Vincent asks, what if the road is a rifle, is the rifle? The only way to wander these hills of grass to feel the warmth of solitary sun. What if it's only after the shot that my muzzled flame will spread past trees, spark sky to flower? What if where you see a road, I see a wall of rage growing ever higher, a wall curving light into swirl of shadow, into deepening dark? And what if I'm trying to wrap those winds into spirals, spirals that will rise my soul up, over, out, spirals that will offer answers between search and smoke, between lift and loss? But what if all I can offer is one match to light a stem of leaves for flame, trees that will bloom in copied shine, trees that we know are doomed to barren branches in fall? And what if I take the hand of the ghost that comes for me, believe that the belly of earth that birthed billions, now hungry for me? Nancy, my cousin, was magic and life and insight and all the things that set the fields ablaze. She was a swirl of light, uplifting the dark in herself, in her students, in her family, and in me. And I miss her. But, you know, she leaves with us these treasures of art and treasures of students and family and her prose and her poetry. And that it's just a tremendous, great legacy that I thank her for. And I know will continue to spread past trees and spark sky to flower.
And when I was kind of gathering items to share today, there was a point in time where I was wondering if we were going to be able to last an hour. All right, Christine.
Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, so my name is Christine Barboza. I've been teaching here for many years. I'm still teaching here, and I'm seeing all my friends that are retired. FOMO, just kidding. Bills to pay. Okay. So yeah, I have known Nancy, wow, for the entire time she was here. I started here in 1991. I'm just going to give some highlights of her at Paramount High School and what she meant to Paramount High School. And I am currently a speech and debate coach. I'm the department chair here at Paramount High School. So sorry. Nancy also was. I know Nancy as somebody, and everybody who knows her is going to know this is true, fiercely compassionate, like fierce, like angrily, right? About her students. And I'm really going to talk about her students and their preparation for college and life. She did not accept less than. She was unyielding and never accepting less than her students' best, as Victor mentioned. She set high expectations and supported her students throughout that very, I don't know, difficult process of suffering, but she stood by them. Even though she had the expectation way up here, she didn't just leave them on the island. She took them step by step if they were willing to come along. So at one point, I was the honors 10th grade teacher. I'm not sure what Victor was talking about. And Nancy was the 11th grade honors teacher. And we are really different teachers, like night and day. And so when my 10th grade honors would pass on to Nancy's 11th grade honors, you know, all my 10th graders come back. Oh my God, she's so mean. She's so strict. She's so picky. She doesn't like anything. And I'm like, just calm down. It'll be fine. Just go through it. They were just always complaining. And then those same students, like Victor, I'm sure, would come back senior year, college. And I remember when I was also the head track coach, one of my students, athletes, would come back and, you know what? I know how to write because of Ms. Himel. I know how to write. I know so many people have said that. And they're maybe not writers or poets or creative people, but they know how to compose something that is cohesive and people can understand. And it's writing is so difficult for so many people. And she really managed to make people who felt so poorly about their own writing skills have sort of joy and pride in it. The next thing I want to talk about is that, so Nancy, when she was involved in something, everybody had to know, and it was the best thing ever. And you had to be involved too, because if you weren't, why not? And so she was really involved in CATE, California Teachers of English. And so I remember, you know, she just, oh, we have to go to this conference. And I'm like, okay, Nancy, I will go, just so you'd stop telling me about it. Oh my God, it was the best conference ever. And she knew everybody. So then I got to meet everybody, all the guest authors. That was awesome. So we all know that Nancy's really super creative. So I thought, oh, I'm going to share this lesson in one of our PLCs. Mr. Arya, you might have been there. And I was like, oh, I saw this at a conference. Maybe Nancy, you'd be interested. And so it was kind of like a metaphor of your life and your identity. And you kind of like drew a tree and identified the roots and the trunk and the branches and the leaves and what are those in your life. And Nancy's, oh my God, that's great. And so, you know, she put steroids in it and it was like, and I showed some of my student work and I was like really proud of it. I'm not really an artsy person. And she's like, oh, that's really nice, Chris. Okay. And then she was like, oh, come and see what my students are doing. Okay. They wrote a poem about their tree and they did some paper mache tree. I have no idea. It was amazing. I was like, I am never sharing another lesson with you ever. A lot of people did mention macaws. And so macaws, I think for some of us old timers from Paramount, I think it was, I know it's a bird, but it was really my cause. I think it came out of, right? Griselle. Hey guys, former student. And okay, I'm just going to tell you that was the most successful club in Paramount High School. Come on, you guys. Yes, that club, through her service and struggle and everything that she went through, and all the students that she brought along with her, impacted so many lives. In fact, I went to one of her events. I know I'm saying it kind of ironically, but I really did. And we partnered with Habitat for Humanity. We went to an elderly person's house and their yard was, you couldn't even see where it started, where it ended. And so she was there and, okay, everybody get a hoe and a rake and a shovel. And she's working. And if you're not working, you're getting yelled at. Oh my gosh, I was so tired. I did not want to be yelled at. I wanted to make sure I cleaned it as well as Nancy wanted me to, because she was like, we are doing this for this person. We're going to do the best we can for them. And it was so great because I got to work and dig up holes or whatever with like my students too. And that was such a great experience that she, organized for us. And we wouldn't have that opportunity unless Nancy was Nancy. A few years ago, I was running for union president. You know that Nancy was like my #1 campaign advocate. Oh my gosh. So she's like, okay, where are you having your campaign kickoff? I'm like, I don't know. It's like the school union. Who cares? Like, no, you have to have a kickoff. Every campaign, Okay. So do this, Nancy. You organize it and I'll show up. Okay. I mean, right? Like, So it was at Starbucks, her favorite Starbucks of all time, that she would go every morning before work. And so it was there in their little courtyard area. And I don't know how she did it, but anybody who said they were going to vote for me, they would get like a free treat in Starbucks. I don't know how she did that. I was like, well, that's a lot of money. Right now in our library, there is a piece of artwork. I don't know if you guys knew that. That library is just right across there. And I love that that's still there. Every time I go to the library, I'm like, hey, you guys, that's a teacher. One of our teachers drew that. Oh, really? Or made that. And not only is she a part of Paramount High School because of that painting, she's a part of Paramount High School because the measure of her influence is immense. Not only her poetry that we heard today, her art, her teaching, but all of that lives inside all of us, right? Not only if we weren't her student, but her colleague. And so she will always, always be a part of the brick and mortar of Paramount High School, I think. And it's unconscionable that she's not around, but I think she's still around. Thank you.
All right, Annie and Julie, one at a time, both of you at the same time.
Would you like to go first? All right. Nancy was a very dear friend of my mother and reared me in a sense like an angel that's in her home. I felt that she really nourished me and invited me into her circle and impacted my philosophy of life, and also steered me in the direction of teaching. And so I give my greatest thanks to Nancy for standing here in Long Beach, near to North Long Beach, where I'm currently subbing. It wouldn't be unless I had the great mentorship that Nancy provided in my life. She helped me study for the CBEST and do a little logical essay. I was having trouble writing and putting things into practical chunks. And I'm missing her. I'm missing her cackle and her sparkly eyes. And she's part of my meditation. And she was whimsical yet solid. I think I envied her solidness, but she helped me to be more solid in myself. And my mom and I are wearing purple, like some of you here. I kind of forgot about that. It's nice because it feels like a part of her hug for us today.
Well, I met Nancy 20 to 25 years ago at First Congregational Church in Long Beach, like Bob. And she we clicked right away because we had a mutual love of books. And I think the one thing I was really impressed about was her almost insatiable curiosity about life. I think that curiosity, like Megan said earlier, it was like, she was 110% in when she was going after something. And it informed her art, it informed her teaching, it informed her understanding, and especially in her teaching, how important social justice was. And that hasn't gone away, really, when you think about it. I mean, I think that's one of the things I loved about her, that she was willing to take a chance and challenge her students. One story that I have about that was she was teaching Leslie Newman's book, October Morning, a song for Matthew Shepard, to her, must have been her seniors. And a very difficult but beautiful collection of poetry. And she got in contact with a friend who is a composer in residence. He works out of church. He's also a teacher in Long Beach. But she called him because in her preparation for teaching October Morning, she asked Curtis Hurd, the composer, if he could come up with some music. So she was looking for collaboration. And he did come up with something for her, and he hadn't heard of the poetry. But the takeaway from it is that that little seed she planted in her collaboration with other artists turned into an oratorio that he wrote and published. And I think it's probably one of the best things he ever did. He used that poetry that she turned him on to. And the music is beautiful. The message is incredible, actually ends up being quite uplifting for such a horrible thing to happen to a young gay man. And that's one of the things about her that, she was incredibly creative. I miss her, and I didn't have a chance to say goodbye. I'm sorry. So I'm very grateful to the family for providing this for all of us. I mean, it's a way of saying goodbye to her. She moved to Tucson, and I know she had good life and was establishing roots there and being Nancy, and with dreams of opening a gallery. I think some of you can confirm that. And it was just like her to just go after it in a big way. I wish she had more time to realize some of those dreams, but we did keep in touch. But it happened so fast. I know how hard that must have been on you. And, I grieve with everybody here for her, but I'm happy to be here and be able to say goodbye in this way. And, there's going to be nobody like her, but I'm hoping there'll be many teachers as like her as they can be, because we need that kind of thing, in the world. So thank you.
All right, I think we have, Mary Lou. I think if you can unmute and.
Unmuted.
All right.
Okay, I have notes, but I don't know if I'm going to follow them. So I live in Tucson. I met Nancy in 2019 in a writing class called Listen and Flow. It was poetry prompt. And we just wrote stories from our lives. I missed the very beginning of class because I was late, which isn't uncommon. But after class, I mean, Nancy and I kind of clicked and we liked each other's work. Of course, hers was much better. But we stood out by our cars, her Watson, my Andy, which is short for Andromeda. She had the Honda Element, I had the Subaru Forester. You know, we bonded and we became friends. But one of the things that I asked her, I said, you know, you kept talking about your kids, all your kids. I said, I've got one son and one grandson. How many kids do you have? And she kind of did a double take and blinked and said, well, hundreds, maybe even thousands. And I took a step back going, whoa, wait, what's happening here? And she said, but I'm not a mom, I'm a teacher. And I said, oh, and she said for 30 years, and I'm retired now. I said, oh, okay, now I can see it. But her sense of humor really, really attracted me. I just thought, this is going to be a good friend. And I was blessed with her friendship. But we had a glitch, and I think I've worked through this, but I let her down and I procrastinated and didn't do what I intended to do. But I found out in early 2020, as COVID was spreading like wildfire, Nancy's gregarious self and her passion for shopping. I never had the money to shop. So for me, shopping was a chore. But Nancy loved to go shopping. She loved to talk with people. Well, I do too, but not when I'm spending my money, you know. So it was one of those things where we had similar interests but different execution of them. However, I found out I needed open heart surgery, and it was scheduled for May the 4th. And yes, the 4th was with me. I'm here today, and Nancy's not, which is heartbreaking. But her going to Starbucks every day and making them brownies and just doing what she did so naturally, which was in her.
Well, that was nice.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Oh, I didn't know if that was an airplane coming. Okay, so you can hear me okay now?
Yes.
Okay, good. Anyway, so I'm not quite sure where I was. So I found out I had to have open heart surgery. The second time I had it 9 years before, and I got an aortic valve from a cow, which I called Oh Bessie. And this time I was getting a mechanical valve, which I called my Tiny Tin Man. And I also got a pacemaker. So here I am in a hospital that's not accepting COVID patients. And I've got, you know, a shitload of scars. And I don't care about the scars because I don't really look at them. It doesn't bother me. But I was worried about COVID because of being among the vulnerable at that point. And I had met up with Nancy a few times. She kindly gave me a ride in Watson when I wasn't able to drive yet. And that all worked out nicely, but she's so outgoing. She said, oh, let's go and do this. And it sounded great at the time. And then I'd call her up in the morning and say, you know, I'm really exhausted. I need to sleep. that was true. But I also felt a sense of relief that I wouldn't have to worry about, no matter what mask I wore, that somehow or another I could get COVID and that would kill me. And anyway, one thing led to another, and we made plans to see some of Tucson's murals and do a class that I think Richard might have suggested, or a project that Richard might have suggested. And I loved Tucson's murals and I wanted to go. And I woke up that morning and I said to myself, when are you going to grow up? You have to look out for yourself. And I called her and I said, Nancy, I need to talk with you. I can't do this. I want to, but I can't do it because I'm too vulnerable. I don't know, where you've been, who we might encounter when we're out there. And she said, well, we can move our chairs apart. And I said, yeah, but I'm just not feeling it. And she said, what's important is you want to. We'll make it work another time. And another time never came because I was worried. I was worried that I was going to get sick on top of the heart business. And I followed her sort of from the back of Facebook, where I could just kind of see what's going on and how she's doing. And time continued forward, and I started buying little things when I would go out shopping with my N95 mask. I was buying little things that were purple, and I wanted to collect these little things and make it as a peace offering when I felt like I could actually congregate with friends, And then I had a string of company, family and friends, and my college roommate. And she and I went on the haiku hike, and I saw Nancy's poem. And I thought I took a picture of it, but I can't find it. But I saw Nancy's poem, and I was so excited for her that she got in and hers was selected. That was in May of this year. And I continued to pick up little purple things. And then I didn't follow through. And so I spent the next 2 weeks, when I found out that Nancy had died, I spent the next 2 weeks wearing something purple every day, like this purple shirt. I didn't realize how much purple I had in my closet. And there's a part of me that wants to think that Nancy fixed up my closet with purple clothes that I didn't even remember having. And after 2 weeks of wearing purple every day, I decided that she had forgiven me. So thank you. And thank you, Nancy, for getting to meet you. Sorry, I'm done.
Thank you, Mary Lou. All right, that's the last person who requested to, to speak when we put out the request for people to, respond and come and attend. I think we have a few minutes if, anybody has a desire to share some other stories about Nancy and memories. All right.
I'd really like to hear from Mary Grace Gardner, her views on macaws, please. Mary Grace, are you willing to speak? She's online, Mark.
Oh,
Okay.
hi. Yes, so have a 4-month-old. Let me just put him down so I can talk. And I will turn on my camera just 1 second. Hi, everyone. So I'm Mary Grace Gardner, class of 2002, and had the honor of having class with Ms. Himmel, and I hear Mr. Oria is in the audience, so hi, Mr. Oria as well, and Ms. Barbosa, who were all part of my language arts development. And so this is an impromptu speech, but I'm happy to make it because there's so many memories that I have of Ms. Himmel, and I am just so thankful, incredibly thankful for the impact that she made on my life. So I know you asked me to talk about macaws, but there's a couple other things I want to throw in there because of just how wonderful she was to us students. And I just quickly sent a text over to some of our classmates, and some additional ones joined because of just the impact that she made on our lives. It was really tough when I saw the update about her passing. I cried. She was an incredible educator who positively impacted the trajectory of my writing. And so in my day job, I work in surgical robotics, I work in hospital leadership, but writing is the #1 thing that I do. And she had taught me that, and my other educators in English taught me that as well. But she was really centered on making sure that writing was really from the heart. And so when I'm writing speeches, when I'm giving them in my work, when I'm writing, I go back to the key tenets that she taught me of the passion, the authenticity, the nonconformity that's really important to embed in writing. And she just believed in us so much as students who are growing up in a city where not very many students go to a 4-year university. She had such high expectations for us that prepared us very well for college and beyond. And so I'm just so incredibly thankful for that. Going back to macaws, so I was one of the founding members. I see Olga Ruana, who's also here too. We graduated the same year. We were founding members of the macaws group. And I remember Ms. Himmel talking to us about this idea she had about having a really special program to put together in this club, where it would be student ran, student generated, but really making meaningful impacts in the community. And someone mentioned earlier that you couldn't participate in the holiday delivery if you weren't one of the people participating in all the work that led up to it. And Ms. Himmel just taught us the importance of giving back to your community, the importance of making community connection. So when I recalled when we went through the experience, she really did have us learn things like, how do we connect with business owners to be able to generate donations, how to generate these partnerships with the community, things that as teens we didn't know how to do, right? But she taught us these very meaningful skills outside of the classroom on how do you have these conversations, how do you ask for what's needed. And I think one of the things that is a very vivid memory for me is when we actually did do the runs to the different families. I think the year that we did the donations to the families that we adopted, I think there were about 20 families, where I was part of the group of people who would go to the households, and we read about the families, we read about the kids, and we tried our best to match up gifts with the kids, and it's all on paper. You kind of don't really have much of a sense of the impact of that sort of activity. But I remember when we actually went to the households, saw the conditions of the houses that we were visiting, saw the thankfulness of the parents when they saw us come by with our Santa along with us, saw the children who were just so excited and so happy that they actually would have something under the tree. I think for me as a student at the time, I was 16, 17, it made such a profound impact on me, on the importance of investing in our children in the future, so much so that my graduate degree is in maternal and child health. So the types of things that she just exposed us to, just above and beyond, I would say, it was just so incredible. I was saying in the chat, so if you have an opportunity to see the chat, she did things like have us listen to readings by Maya Angelou, right? She would take us in her car to go to poetry readings. She went to just above and beyond to give students like us just an incredible learning experience. And and I'll close with this last story. The last time I saw her in person was when I was in graduate school at Berkeley. And I think she was visiting family up north, and we were able to coordinate dinner together. So she came to have dinner with me, and we were at my favorite Chinese place in Berkeley. So we had dinner, we caught up. She talked to me about her new car that she was really excited about having. She talked about the purple scarf that I crocheted for her as a teen that she still had till that day. She had such specific memories of me as a student. I was just so floored because it was so many years past, but she cared so much. I remember telling her about my career success, my educational success, and the check came for dinner. And I immediately grabbed it, and she snatched it right back. And she told me, Mary Grace, no matter how successful you are, no matter how much money you make, you will always be my student. I will always be your teacher, and I will always take care of you. So embarrassingly, she took it back. She gave it to our waiter, gave the credit card, and I of course insisted to let me pay after all she had done for me. The least I could do is pay for dinner. And she said no, as a teacher, as an educator, as someone who cared so much, that she always wanted to be in that position to be that positive influence and to be that person taking care of me. And I think that's just indicative of the type of person that Ms. Himel was. And I think that all of us here who've had the opportunity to connect with her are truly blessed. I'm so sad that she isn't here, but I think her impact is going to live on forever. So thank you for this chance to share my experience.
Thank you, Mary Grace, for speaking.
It does remind me, I think everybody's mentioned how Nancy did things, to an extreme level, 110%. And when I was a graduate student, I got involved in attending science fiction conventions. And at one point, Nancy said, there's a science fiction convention down in San Diego. So I want to take my students, some of my students, the deserving students, to go to the science fiction convention. I'm like, okay, great, let's go to the science fiction convention. Nancy just doesn't go to a science fiction convention. She reaches out to the convention and says, I'm going to be bringing 10 students down there and I need volunteer opportunities for them. So what are you going to have them do so that they can volunteer? And even I went with them and I had to do volunteer work as well. At the same time, she reached out to the authors that were going to be there and said, I'm coming down, from Paramount High School with some students of mine, and you're one of my favorite science fiction authors. And so I would like to have them meet with you and do a reading. And she managed to arrange with, I don't know how many of the authors, Samuel Delaney was one of them that I mentioned earlier, where sat down in his suite and he read from one of his, novels to them. And then they were able to ask him questions and stuff like that. So I go to conventions. She goes to conventions. So I think with that, the last thing that we wanted to mention is we know that there is a work of art of hers, in the library. But we would like to extend the legacy that Nancy has here by establishing a scholarship. So right now we're calling it the Nancy Himel McCaws Memorial Scholarship. That seems to be fitting. And we kind of looked at all the attributes that had the things that she drove into her students in their lives. Concept of lifelong learning, creativity, truly a love for all humanity. Nancy exhibits an idea that humanity is one. Everybody has value, everybody has a purpose, and there's a gold nugget in everybody, as we heard even from Victor earlier. And her concept of everybody contributing to the community, and we want to help and continue that. So the family's committed to raising some funds and contributing funds to this. Don't have a lot of detail yet on exactly how we're going to collect that, but we will, create certain criteria that people are involved in community service, maybe have them write a poem or a short story or something, and to get the scholarship and basically help them get just a little bit of additional support when they decide to go away to a 4-year, 2-year or 4-year college. So I have everybody's email address who is attending virtually in here. If anybody would like to contribute, we would love to have your support, in this and maintaining Nancy's legacy for hopefully years to come. And with that, I think that's all I have, to say. I'm not really an MC good at closing out things, but we are thrilled to have, shared all of your stories of our sister and look to hearing more. And I just want to thank everybody for coming and being here. And you're all very special. We're special to her and special to us. I think we're all family now. And hopefully we can all remain in touch. So thank you.
So Mark, there are a couple of people on Zoom that might have something to
So
say.
those of us that are here. Yep, Steve.
There are a couple of people on Zoom that might have something to say if there's time.
Sure.
Okay, the first one is Leslie.
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to share that Nancy was, can you hear me okay? Nancy was one of my students from the Glen. She took 2 of my workshops in 2016 and 2017, and she was an absolute joy. She just dove into those art projects. We collected things. She made a sculpture that was out of like some kind of skull that she found on the ground out there. I mean, she dove in. She was there like at night. She was there during the day. She was sharing her poetry. And that was my way of getting to know her. And then a really special thing was my aunt and uncle at the time lived in Tucson, a couple in 2020. And so I went out and set up a time to visit with her and saw her purple home. And she just was such a supporter. And to hear all the stories of the students, like she even bought one of my art pieces. And I was like, really? Okay. I just am so thankful. We got on the phone and she would read her poetry, and she wrote a poetry about the class she took with me. I mean, she was voracious in her support and her poetry making, and she was just a delight. And just one fun, quick story is we went out to, I think it's called Triangle Ranch, out past Tucson, and through family connections and a friend, we went and visited the arts out there, and she just got herself writing poetry right away. I mean, it was amazing to see her just zone in, focus in. I don't know. I just wanted to tell you that your sister and friend is such a special woman. And the small time that I met her, I felt like I'm like, oh, there's so much more. And thanks for sharing them more today with us.
And one of the millions of iPhones in the world, I have something to say and is attending.
Hello, everyone. I think that's me. I didn't rename my screen name, but my name is Eddie Cruz, class of 95. She was our class advisor. And over the last 4 years, we got really close. We were close before that. As a student, I got to see how wonderful she was. She never did anything at a minimum or basic level. She always went all out. Some of her ideas were out there, and I thought that's never going to happen. But she had the vision. Later on, as a colleague, I came back to Paramount, taught English with her. Just a wonderful mentor. But really, the last 4 years were very special to me. As I ran for school board in Paramount, every morning on my drive to work, we would have that chat. We would talk about Paramount and how much she wished she was there, and she was always cheering me on, and it was just really nice. In the last few months of her being with us, I would still check in with her, but one July, I think it was in July, something was telling me to call her, so I did. It had been a few weeks, and I checked in on her, and she shared that she was at the hospital. And still very energetic, very happy. She started to tell me what was going on, and she just said her brother was taking care of business, and she was just being Nancy Himel, very carefree, very happy. I was getting ready for my trip to Europe. She asked me to send her pictures of the cathedral in Barcelona, Holy Family, and our closing. I wished her well, and her response to me was, well, I always said that I didn't want to get old. I didn't think that was going to be our final conversation. this cancer took her quick and too soon. I will always appreciate her and miss her. And I know she's with us. Thank you.
Thanks, Eddie. All right. So unless my brother Steve says otherwise, I think that's it for this formal portion. For those of you that are here in person, we do have some refreshments, and we hope that you'll stay and enjoy the refreshments and the company and the conversations, and we can all share more stories with each other. And I guess that. Yes, and all of you on Zoom, thank you very much. I think we had over 50 people originally, on Zoom, about 40 people here. So it's just a great testimony to our sister and teacher and artist, Nancy. All right. Thank you.
Thank you all. I know.
For those of you that are still here on Zoom, if you want to turn on your cameras, I can take some shots of everybody that's here and send them. And he has all your email addresses. Okay, I got it.
Thank you for the wonderful program.
Want to unmute and talk amongst yourselves while you're still here until the meeting gets closed down, that's fine.
Sorry, Steve, I can't hear you if you're talking to me. No, too much noise in the room now.
Go ahead and do whatever you're going to do. I think you can close down Zoom.
Steve, do you want to stop the recording?
Oh, and I want to save chat.
Yeah, I saved the chat.